for you to make sure your picture is accurate. That way you don't have any delays in getting it back. And if I were you, I would go ahead and pay to have it expedited. We just had our kids get theirs. We paid to get it expedited. I think we got it back in 3 weeks. So just if you don't have one, you need to start that this week. The next section talks about beneficiary and emergency contact information. We will take out travel insurance for the trip, medical insurance for everybody that goes on the trip. So we just need 2 different emergency contacts. Please don't put the same name down on both those blanks. The last one says health information. Do you have any health problems or concerns? Really, the only thing we're looking for there is anything that you would want Pastor Matt to know. Anything that if you didn't have your medicine, you're in trouble. So for example, if you have an allergy in which you need the EpiPen shot, he needs to know that. If you have asthma, he would need to know that. If you take a medicine regularly, that if you miss a day or 2, it's no big deal. We don't have to know that. We just need anything that you would say, I want the team leader to know this about me so that if I have trouble there, somebody in country knows how to help me. I'm going to flip over to the next page. It's your testimony, and that's pretty straightforward. And then the last couple of questions, have you been on a short-term mission trip before, and why do you want to go on this trip? So if you'll take time to fill that out for us, we'd appreciate it. The next page is our covenant. This deals with how we handle the money at Forest Park, as well as some expectations that we have for you as team members. So I do want to go through this really quickly. It says, by signing this covenant, I am indicating that I'd like to participate in a Forest Park missions trip, and I will obtain the funds necessary to do so. I realize that all checks should be made payable to Forest Park, and all the funds will be administered as a project set up in the name of the trip on the books of Forest Park. In essence, the key part is I will obtain the funds necessary to do so. In other words, it's your responsibility to come up with the funds for your trip to go. We will not do a big Forest Park fundraiser out in the community to try to get people to give for our missions trip to Mexico. Just like we're going to Mexico to tell people about Jesus, we're trying to do the same thing right here. We believe it sends the wrong message to people in the community to ask them to pay for us to do ministry as we minister. So it's your responsibility to come up with funds for your trip. Furthermore, I understand the project will be established with the submission of my application and my initial $300 non-refundable deposit. So to sign up for the trip, you need to turn in this packet or the applications along with a $300 deposit. And we're going to do that by next Sunday. Is that what we decided?
Yeah, preferably if you have issues with that, let me know. I know it's a quick turnaround, but we can have conversations about any of this, but set yourself a goal if you have it.
So the goal would be next Sunday to have the application turned in along with the deposit. If you have several people from your family going, then obviously we're not expecting to come up with $1,200 or $1,500 in a week. So just talk with myself or talk with Matt and we'll work that out. The next bullet says any funds contributed by myself or other people for my participation trip will be used in accordance with the mission team giving policy. I'll cover that in just a minute. And then the big one, in the event that I do not participate in the mission trip, it is my responsibility to pay for any expenses incurred for me or on my behalf. So what will happen is as soon as you guys sign up for the trip, we will start making purchases like airfare, lodging, missions or team supplies, things we need to do ministry with. If you were to back out once we've spent that money, then the church has already spent money on your behalf. So you've paid it, for example, let's just talk about airfare. You've paid in $300. Let's say we get airfare for $800. Well, the church in essence has paid $500 on your behalf to go and purchase your airfare. If you were to back out, the church is on the hook for that $500. So it's our expectation that you would pay the church back for anything that we cannot get refunded. Typically, the only thing that's difficult to work with is airfare. Every airline company is different. So just know that once you sign up, if you back out, if we can't get it refunded, we're going to come to you and say, hey, we still owe $400 to American Airlines. We can't use that ticket for somebody else. It's our expectation you pay the church back for that. Typically, what happens with most airlines is that they will give you a voucher for future travel at a rate that's lower because they're going to charge a fee to switch it from a ticket to a voucher. So for example, we buy airfare for $900, you paid in the $300, you back out, you pay us the remaining $600, so we're all square. You will probably have a voucher for $650 to $700 because they're going to charge a fee to switch it. But at least it's a voucher that you can use. You're not just out the whole amount of money. Does that kind of make sense how the airfare works? If you have a question about that, let me know. The rest of the bullet points there all have to do with expectations that we have while you're on the trip. You can read through those. Let us know if you have any questions about any of those. And then you sign it. Once you've signed that, turned in your deposit, you are signed up for the trip. The next page is the getting policy. If you look at it real quickly, Mission trips are a little different than any other trips that we do as a church. Typically, if we send kids to camp or if we go on an outing somewhere, you cannot use the money you give for that as a tax write-off. But mission trips are different. Mission trips are considered ministry. So any funds that you give to go on the mission trip, you can also use as a tax write-off when it comes time to your taxes at the end of the year. A couple of things have to happen. It's in bold print right there at the top. If the participant's name is on the check, we will not be able to send you a tax deductible contribution statement. So that's why we created this form. Write the check to Forest Park, memo Mexico, and then turn in this form with it. And that way we will apply any funds that you raise or you give towards your trip. But we're also meeting the IRS regulations of not having names on the check. So if you write the check to Forest Park and you write Matt Rose's mission trip, we cannot give you a charitable contribution statement for that because the IRS says you're giving it to Matt, you're not giving it to ministry. If you write the check to Forest Park and memo Mexico mission trip, then you can use it as a tax write-off, which will help you with your taxes at the end of the year. So please do that. We encourage everybody to do that, take advantage of that. But if you write the check to Forest Park and you write Brock's mission trip on there, it'll go to your mission trip. You just won't get the tax receipt at the end of the year to use for your taxes. Does that kind of make sense? All right. So that's all the information there about any giving that goes on. Next couple things I want to talk about is the travel warning and the vaccines. So for those of you on Zoom, this is the one that you don't have. We'll get it uploaded here as soon as we can. That's the smaller package I gave you, just a couple of pages. If you'll notice on the first page, Mexico currently is a level 3, which the State Department defines as reconsidered travel. At Forest Park, we will go on mission trips up through a level 3. If it gets to a level 4, that's when we decide to reconsider it. So we're comfortable with going at a level 3. We just want you to have the information. The website is there right underneath the title, so if you want to go read more about it, you can. I just pulled out a couple of things that we wanted you to be aware of. First, obviously COVID-19 is in Mexico, just like it is everywhere else in the world, so they're encouraging people not to go due to that. And then if you look down at reconsider travel section, Zacatecas State, they encourage people not to go there due to crime, and that's the state we're going to. So we just want you to be aware of that. Like I said, you can go look at that website and read more information about that. But we are comfortable as a church sending teams there given the current warning. If it should go up to a level 4, then at that point we would get with you and talk about whether we're going to continue to go or not. But with it being a level 3, we're comfortable with sending a team. If you flip over on the page, it gets into all the medicines that are recommended. I believe in the packet that Matt gave you guys, there is a link to the same website, but we just wanted to hit a couple of these for you. Notice all of these are recommendations. There are no vaccines that are required to go to Mexico, which means you don't have to do any of this if you don't want to. But this is what the Center for Disease Control recommends. All your routine vaccines be up to date, and those are listed for you. If you're in school or in college, you probably have to have those up to date in order to be in school or college. So mainly adults would need to double check that one. Hepatitis A is recommended. Hepatitis A is transmitted through contaminated food and water. We will do our best to make sure that you have good, clean food and water everywhere we go, but we can't guarantee it. I would highly recommend getting the hepatitis A vaccine if you're considering leaving the U.S. If you're going on a cruise and you ask me, hey, I'm going to go on a cruise, what do you think? I would say get the hepatitis A vaccine, just because there's no guarantee when you leave the country on how food is prepared. And so that's one that I would highly recommend. Hepatitis B is also on the list. I would not recommend that one. That one's transmitted through body fluids. So unless you're planning on having a surgery, getting a piercing or a tattoo while you're there, you probably don't need to worry about that one. Malaria, it depends on the part of Mexico we're going to, and I forgot to look before I came to see if it's one. Okay, so malaria you don't have to worry about for the part of Mexico that we're going to. If you flip over the page, measles, rabies, and typhoid. Measles, you should have already had if you're in school. The rabies vaccine is crazy expensive, something like $600 a shot. So I'll let you decide that one. And then typhoid, once again, it is transmitted through contaminated food or water. That's another one that I would encourage you to get. Just because, like I said, we'll do the best we can to make sure you have good, clean food and water, but we can't guarantee it. If you look back at the very top of the page, I meant to point this out. The first page, it says, check the vaccines and medicines list and visit your doctor at least 3 months before your trip to get vaccines and medicines you may need. At the end of the day, I'm not a doctor. I don't think Matt's a doctor. He might be. I'm not. We'd encourage you to go talk to your doctor and say, hey, this is what the CDC recommends. I'm going to Mexico. What do you recommend knowing my medical background? And get with your doctor and check on that. If you're wanting my opinion, I would say routine vaccines, hepatitis A, and typhoid would be the ones that I would be most concerned about. At the end of the section there, the next page, it talks about some other diseases that are in Mexico. I'll let you read through those, but dengue fever and Zika are both there. So we just want you to be aware of that as you prepare to go. Like Matt said, I get to do the yucky stuff, he'll do the fun stuff. If you're not afraid to go yet, there's still more to come. My goal really is not to convince you not to go. I just want to make sure you have all the information. We've already talked about passports, so I won't hit that again. As far as our COVID plan, currently the United States requires anybody coming into the United States to have received a negative COVID-19 test within 3 days of boarding the plane. So that will be for us too. So when the team goes to Mexico, currently you're not required to get a test before you go, but before we come back to the US, you will have to get the test. As of today, they provide the rapid test at the airports we fly in and out of, so we don't think it's going to be an issue. You'll just take the test, and then as long as you get a negative test, you'll hop on the plane and come home. However, if you get a positive test, Matt and Ms. Hannah have agreed to stay behind with anybody who gets a positive test. So just know that we are not going to leave anybody behind. If somebody gets a positive test, Matt and Hannah are going to stay until everybody's cleared to come home. But you need to know that there's the possibility that if you get that positive test there at the airport, that you're going to have to quarantine in Mexico at a hotel. Matt and Hannah will be at the same hotel with you. They'll make sure you get food, water, all that stuff, take care of you, get you medical treatment if you need it. But it could be that your stay goes from 1 week or 8 days to 2 or 3 weeks, depending on how long it takes for you to recover. So we just want to be sure that you're aware of that on the front end. The cost for the trip is in the packet there. It's $1,200. However, we have several scholarships that we're super excited about this year. So I just want to hit those real quickly. If you're a first-time participant, meaning you've never gone on a Forest Park trip before, then we're going to give you a 40% scholarship, which means your trip cost would go down to $720. If you're a repeat Forest Parker, meaning you've gone on a trip with Forest Park before, you'll get a 25% scholarship. So that means your trip cost will go down to $900. And if you're a student in grades 7 through 12, you're going to get a $700 scholarship, which means your trip cost will be $500. So all that to say, this is the year to go. If you've ever thought about going financially, this is the year to go, because this is probably going to be the cheapest we'll ever have mission trips at Forest Park. If you have questions about those, feel free to ask Matt or myself, but those are going to be automatic. You sign up, we'll apply it to your trip, and it's done. So for example, if you're a first-time person, if you paid your $300 deposit, and then we give you the scholarship, you've got to come up with another $420 before we leave. All right, people always ask, when's the money due? The final payment has to be paid in full before we get on the plane. So if you're fundraising, you've got the whole time to raise funds. And that's why we do that. Like I mentioned earlier, the sign-up deadline is going to be next Sunday, the 28th. The last thing I want to talk about is fundraising. Like I mentioned, we do not fundraise as a church. We're not going to do a big bake sale or a big car wash out in the parking lot to try to get the community to pay for our Mexico mission trip. We do, however, encourage you to raise funds for your trip. And so a couple ways you can do that. One is you can send out support letters. I've got several sample support letters that other people at Forest Park have written in the past. So if you're like, I'd like to ask some people for some help, but I've never done that before, let Matt know or let myself know. And I'll send you some sample support letters, and you can look at how they wrote theirs and give you some ideas on how you could write a support letter to send out to people and encourage them to partner with you. If you do that, I would encourage you to have them partner with you both in prayer and financially. If you're in here thinking, hey, I'm going to raise all my own money, I'm not going to ask anybody to help me, I still would encourage you to send out some letters to people encouraging them to be praying for you as you go, to where you have that prayer support also. And so it's a great way to do both those together, prayer support and financial support. The second way to raise funds, a lot of people like to use the GoFundMe or things online to raise funds for the trip. We use a software called Managed Missions that we will tell you more about at the next meeting. But on Managed Missions, you can raise funds for your trip, just like a GoFundMe page. So if you'd like to do something virtually online through Facebook, Twitter, or something like that, Don't use GoFundMe because they're going to charge you a 10% fee. So they're going to take 10% of what you raise and keep it for themselves. The managed mission software that we have works exactly the same way. You'll have your own little website where they can click donate, but 100% of the money that you raise will go to the trip. There won't be anything held out. So at the first meeting or at the next meeting, once we have the team set, I'll go through that with you if you're planning on raising funds online to show you how to set that up. And that way you get 100% of what you raise rather than using another company like GoFundMe that's going to keep some of the funds. So I realized that was really, really fast. That was a lot of information, and it was all the yucky information that nobody wants to think about. But I've got another meeting I've got to run to. So before I go, I just want to see if you have any questions about applications, funds, shots, our COVID plan, any of that stuff.
Will having the COVID vaccine change getting back in the States?
No, great question. Question was, if you have the COVID vaccine, does that change that requirement to get tested? Currently, it does not. Everybody has to get tested regardless of your vaccine status and regardless of if you've had it before. So, great question.
It might change your chances of getting COVID.
Yeah, we would encourage you, I would encourage you to get the vaccine if you can, because if the vaccine works, like they say it does, which we're assuming it does, then if you get the vaccine, then you would assume you would get a negative test, which means you would be able to come home with the rest of the team. So I would encourage you to get that vaccine. Any other questions? All right, I did not put my email down anywhere, so if you want to give it to him later or whatever, but Matt's going to come and give you all the fun stuff like the actual ministry and why you should go. So
You're Brock, right? Not
Yeah.
Roxy?
just Brock, yeah. Thanks.
Pro tip, you ever need to get in touch with one of our pastors, it's their first name at Forest Park Baptist Church, unless there are multiple of their first names, like Caleb Clark back there. If it's Estrella, if you ever become full-time staff, you can email address, you'd be Estrella. Just you. Sorry, I'll give you this back. Thank you. Thank you, Brock, stealing my stool. So, it's gonna be a fire hose today, I think, but that's okay. I'm excited about this trip. Again, like I said, I've been on it 2 times. This was with my church before my last church, so a while back. It's been about 3 years since I've been there. Since then, they've changed a couple of the forms that they have. So what we're gonna go through is we're gonna go through what I sent you guys initially, which is kind of just an informational document. A lot of times we'll do interest meetings and invite people to it and then give them the info document. I felt like I wanted the people to be here, the ones who had kind of already internally made the decision to be here. That way, we can go through this way quicker, because literally we have 3 months before we're headed out. So usually we have a bigger turnaround. So we're gonna go through that. Then we're gonna go through a couple of just kind of in-country documents, which is what our missionary, he has a backing organization. That organization obviously wants to continue to protect itself. So we're gonna go through a couple of their forms. And then there are a couple of things that they suggest, because he receives teams all the time, and it's really helpful if you're receiving a team to give them the proper expectations for when they come. Because if I go expecting, like, I don't know, fancy hotel and air conditioner everywhere I go, I'm gonna have a real bad time in Mexico. So part of this is setting expectations. And just to be honest, one thing you'll hear from me is be flexible a lot. Because if you go in with certain expectations and those expectations aren't met, you're gonna find yourself frustrated. Whereas if you go deciding to be flexible and doing whatever God puts in front of you, you're gonna have a better experience. Not just because you didn't expect the wrong, or expected the wrong thing, or didn't expect the wrong things, but because you're looking for what God's gonna do. And so I'd encourage you from this moment on, start processing through what God's trying to do. And it'll help you not only make a decision to officially pay your deposit and go on this trip, but also experience God on the trip. One of the reasons I love mission trips, and I'm just going to spoil it for everybody who came in here thinking they were going to change Zacatecas, Mexico for the better in the 5 days they're going to be there not speaking Spanish. The goal of mission trips for me is, yes, you're going there to support missionaries who are out there by themselves. Like sometimes they're American missionaries and they're out there and they have nobody around them who understands things the way that we understand things. And so they're out there, we go to support them. We also go to add value to what they're doing there. So we're gonna put on a vacation Bible school. It's five people, Ben and Diana Elliott, and their 3 kids, Hadassah, Nehemias, and oh my God, Shalom. It's those 5. And so we're going to go help them put on a VBS. We're going to go help them reach some people into different missions. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to support them. And, we have opportunity through translators, or if you speak Spanish, some of the people that are watching on Zoom speak Spanish and are going to act as either translators or at least people who can try to talk to people because I can't speak Spanish very well. And man, we're going to impact people while we're there. But the ultimate goal for me is that you guys would experience God by seeing what he's doing elsewhere. And I think if you can experience God somewhere else, then you come back home with a new perspective. And when you come home with a new perspective, it's really helpful for you to start making decisions. Because, many of you grew up in the same place your entire life. And if you get a new perspective, it could when the iPhone came out, everything changed for me. Well, no, I waited 3 years to buy it. But when I bought it and started using it, everything changed for me. And now Android, it just, I'm sorry, Jacob, you got an Android phone and I could add you into the group thread. And it's just kidding with you, bro. All right, so let's go through this really quickly. Some people went through it really in depth, and I thank you for your detailed look at the document that I sent you guys. I want to encourage you from this point on, if I send you something, go through it with a fine-tooth comb, because I don't like wasting people's time. So if I sent it to you, it is important. But some people online are just kind of jumping in, and some people didn't even have the document, so I'm going to go through it very briefly. He already talked about the dates. So today we have a meeting. $300 deposit is due Easter Sunday. Those are 2 different dates. So anyways, March 28th, if you feel really, really excited about the trip, Easter is your final deadline to get it in. And again, if there's a financial concern right now, I'm open to conversations about everything. Xavier? Miles. What's your name? Xavier, yeah. So if your parents have any questions after this, have them reach out to me, and I'll make sure to answer any questions they have. Take this document to them. And, all right, so where? Zacatecas, Mexico. Elevation is 6,000 feet. So it's dry and gets cool at night, which is good because they don't have AC. At least the last time, if they have AC at my house, at their house when we get there, I'm gonna be so stoked. Because they have it when I've been there, and I've gone in hotter seasons. We're going to be right at the verge of the wet season. So start praying now that God provides opportunities, because it's really hard to do Vacation Bible School outside when it's pouring down rain during wet season. So we're right at the end of, or at the beginning of wet season. So just be praying that we have good weather. But even if not, I've been there and had some great opportunities occur in the middle of rain. I can tell you stories, but we'll save that for another meeting. Technically, our home base will be at Jerez de Garcia Salinas, which is just about 30 to 45 minutes outside of Zacatecas, Mexico. And then what we'll do is we'll travel back and forth to different villages. And I gave you these maps so you could kind of look at it. I didn't give you every location name because you could barely find some of these on the map. But in essence, the way the missionary then works is he's got his home base where they planted a church. I think for their year anniversary this last year, they had 100 people at their church, which is great from what I've seen down there. And then he'll go from village to village or city to city and kind of plant different missions. So he'll walk through the city, and you'll see this in scripture when Jesus sends out his disciples to walk through the town or village, and he'll interact with people. And over 3 to 6 months, he's assessing whether there's a person there who's going to be receptive to the gospel or to Jesus. And if not, he'll move on to another village. And then if he finds some people, then what he'll do is kind of start building a ministry. So what we're going to do is we're going to help them with these missions. So we'll be in Jerez. That's where we'll do the Vacation Bible School. But we'll go to Plan de Carrillo, where he's planning a mission there. We went hiking up there. It's further up in the mountains, probably 8,000 or 9,000 feet above sea level, and that's where you see some of that. That's in Plan de Carrillo, and we did hiking. Who knows what we'll do? I didn't know we were going on a 6-hour hike. It was only supposed to be an hour. The first year we went. The next year we went on a shorter hike. He's talked to me about spending the night. We'll figure it out when we get there. But when we go up in the mountains, that's going to be the only day you can't communicate with anyone back here. But every other day, in Jerez and all these other places, you will be able to communicate with people back home. And then there's a new village he told me about that I'm really excited about. He says it's up in the mountains. He said, I'm going to love it. So I trust him. What you need to know about Ben our missionary he's an American. He's a hustler. That's what I call him. He's a hustler. Like I told him we had 26 people on a list that were interested in going, and he said, bring them. I'm like, well, we'll get a hotel then. He said, no, you have to stay in the house. I said, how many bathrooms in the house? He's like, 2. So I said, well, we'll keep it limited. I'm trying to keep it limited to 15, and I'll add some more if we get a couple translators, because that'll enhance the experience. But you'll be staying in a bunk bed. You'll be staying maybe on a cot. And there's going to be 2 bathrooms in the house. So don't get high expectations, because their water pressure is not like our water pressure. This is a mission trip. This is not vacation down to the Caribbean, and on one day you go hang out with some people and say you did something. This is a mission trip. We're going to rough it a little bit. We might even go camping. Who knows? He talked about the cost, and here are the details that I want to walk you through. We're going to break this out into meetings. I haven't planned the exact meeting schedule, but again, we only have 3 months, and we're planning a vacation Bible school. We've got to work a little bit on Spanish learning. Not too much. You don't need to be fluent or even conversational, but it is helpful to practice a little bit of your Spanish so you can get by. I'll never forget, I did a mission trip to Miami, but we stayed in Hialeah, Florida, which is 90% Hispanic, and they speak Spanish everywhere. And I was with students, and I woke up in the morning, we were in this urban mission center, and there was a Cuban cafe right across the street. And I sent the students over with my wife, one of the other adults we had. They didn't speak Spanish. And I walk into the cafe with one of our teenagers crying because she's struggling to order her food because they don't speak English. And so I say all that to just encourage you, we can start practicing a little bit. It's okay to cry too, like I don't mind, like that's cool, it's a struggle. It's part of communicating, and it's part of learning about the world and how it works. And
They're also really patient with you.
oh yeah, they're super patient, they're not gonna make you cry.
Don't be afraid to.
She was also a little hypertense, so not every student's gonna respond that way. I'm not really good at this, I haven't led a mission trip before, it's part of church before. So the prep section, is really planning the Vacation Bible School. It's learning language a little bit. It's getting to know each other, because we're going to be a team and we're going to have to work together. And so I haven't got the schedule out, but we're going to probably after Easter start meeting. What I'm currently thinking, because we have a couple of youth students and everybody's got their different schedules, is maybe 4 o'clock to 5:30 when we do our meetings. That way they can jump right into dinner and do Unite. That way it's not stressful on everybody else. Sunday afternoons. I feel like Sunday's a day that people are pretty flexible, except for my soccer practice. We're going to do the Vacation Bible School in Jerez. We're going to do village missions and evangelism. And again, you can ask me any questions about this stuff. Number 4 on this page says gift-oriented ministry. Here's where I realized something radical about mission trips. Is a lot of times you'll go and you'll hang out with kids and you'll enjoy it and you'll meet some people and God will provide some situations for you that help you grow, because that's what God does when we're looking for it. But then there's another level where God has given you specific gifts. I don't know if you're good at talking to people, maybe you're good at music. It could be just about, my wife's a counselor, and we brought the executive chef of the Superdome when I was down in New Orleans, and they had him teach 3 cooking classes to different villages. Like, that was super awesome. My wife did counseling sessions for women in different villages. We brought half of our worship team one year, and we led worship in every place. And that was super fun in the prep time, because we had to translate some songs into Spanish, and some of them were good. And then we had Ben help us put some final touches on it when we got down there, so we didn't say anything stupid in our translations. It was good, and I really appreciated it. We taught lessons for guitar and drums throughout the village. Like, that's gift-oriented ministry. So, like, get a list of the things you think you're good at right now. Like, maybe you're good at sports. I can tell you they like soccer down there. And I don't say that because I'm being like, an American who thinks about Mexico certain ways, because they just like soccer. And that's what we play in the street half the time. So if you're athletic, you will be utilized. If you like riding horses, or if you don't like riding horses, every time we've been down there, for some reason, someone's got a donkey or a horse they want us to ride, and we ride it. So, then we'll jump into creeks, and I don't know, like if you just open the door for God to provide opportunities for you to do random things, I'm gonna tell them about the hike. So the first year we went, we were supposed to go on an hour hike up in a village called Plan de Corrido. And the missionary came up to me that morning because we were just gonna go up there and hang out with them and do kind of a night of vacation Bible school. Took the material and just hang out with their kids, and they wanted to feed us, so we ate. But before we went, he said, hey, I'm really excited about something last minute because the men never show up at church. The women come to church up at this village. The men are always out on the farm doing something and they'll never show up. But for some reason, they knew we were coming, so they wanted to take you guys hiking. I'm like, I'm totally down with a hike. Now, I did have a sprained ankle and a broken foot, longer story there, but I'm like, let's do it. So we get there, we get into their trucks and go off-road. We got into the back of their trucks, but through Forest Park, we're not allowed to get in the back of trucks. So we're not gonna do that this time, or liability issues, I guess. And so we went to where they wanted to hike. It was all off-road, but they knew their land, it was their land. And so we start hiking, it's supposed to be an hour, and then we go down pretty far and hit a creek, and we didn't bring water because it was only supposed to be less than an hour, just like a day hike there. And then they took us up to the other side of the ravine. Long story short, it ended up being a 6-hour hike and really intense. And when Brock was talking about hepatitis A, it might be a good idea just in case something like that happens. I'll make sure to bring water next time they invite me to go hiking. But we drink out of the creek, stuff, just like stuff happens. But for me, this is always my perspective, and I'm not gonna let your kids get hurt, I promise. I won't let you get hurt. No one's ever gotten hurt on a trip that I've ever led. But it was an opportunity to spend time. We got pictures sitting next to men. I was carrying some other lady's baby because she was trying to get down the mountain. And all these, it was just a crazy situation where we were just hiking together and they got to know us. And then it made the dinner that night so much better. And then one of the ladies who knew one of the ladies on the trip invited us into her house. And it was this chart house. It was about the size of this chair to this chair to here. And she probably had another part of the house, but we got 15 of us crammed into a space like this. She starts making us quesadillas. And we'd already eaten dinner, we didn't know what to do. And I looked at my team and I was like, you're eating the quesadilla. Because this is how we roll. And so it's just God provides some layers of opportunity, but flexibility is required for it. Then we're going to do devotions and worship, because if you don't unpack the things that God's doing, sometimes you miss it. So every evening or every morning, we're going to have a little worship session. Cooper Hale's going to come. So he could lead us. I used to lead us, but let musicians do their thing. I'll preach now. And so he'll probably lead us in some worship. And we'll just sit down and we'll talk about the day before and process through what God's doing. Because you might have had a normal day, but the person next to you maybe had a conversation that they need to process through. And so this is part of it. And then the third part is we're going to have fun. Anyone here been to Mexico before? Anyone in here been to Mexico outside of Cancun or Cozumel before? Okay, same groups of people. Well, anyone not from Mexico or have family in Mexico? I'm not going to keep going. Sorry. Anyways, we're going to have fun because most of us haven't been to Zacatecas, Mexico, and it's up in the mountains, and there are just different things to experience. We're going to spend a day in Zacatecas, which is a European-style city. You've probably seen some of the pictures if you were looking at those. Real pretty city. We'll probably eat at the taco place because it's super good. And we'll hike around, do some shopping, get your souvenirs, and we'll zip line because that was fun. And it's real cheap. So we'll zip line. We're going to drive a lot. They've got old school 15-passenger vans. They're raising money for some new ones right now, so we might be the first ones to test drive the brand new ones, but and we might not. We might be the last ones to settle into their old ones. Who knows? But we'll be driving through mountains. They have speed bumps, which they call topes, and those stink. But just be ready to ride the van because we're going from village to village to village and doing stuff. It's just going to be fun. We got the sample schedule here. I'll let you look through that. Usually when he sends the schedule, the bones of it are still there, but the meat of it always changes, which I kind of like. Personally, I don't want to know everything about it. Pastor Brock went through the medical info, and here's a miscellaneous thing. It says miscellaneous. Miscellaneous doesn't mean unimportant. I would love for everybody, raise your hand, Brooklyn. Great, yeah! Brooklyn has already signed up for Duolingo and has followed me on Duolingo. I've given you the information here to do it. The reason I want to do that is because not that I'm gonna track your progress in the sense that you can't go on the trip if you don't do it, but it's just a light level of accountability so you don't come in there and not know how to say, hola, ¿cómo estás? And so that'll be the goal, that we can at least have basic conversations. If I send you a, hey, can you go grab a hammer from this hardware store, you go find your hammer and nobody tells you it costs. So do some basic things that'll just be helpful, and you'll feel super proud of yourself because you're learning a new skill. Everybody wants to learn Spanish, so they go to Spanish class and say, I got 4 years of Spanish, and they show up in Mexico and they're like, I thought it was 4, it's more like 4 minutes of Spanish. But then you learn it and you realize how much you actually learned in class. I think about 2-3 days, I'm usually back to conversational. And so it's always enjoyable to see what happens with that. I'm going to skip through this application. And I'm going to get to, this is where I talked about the on-site. It's the page where it says GFI and Sembradoras de Cristo. I can't roll my R's, FYI. So you can, if I can't, anyways, you can go on this trail if I can't roll my R's. This is his suggestions for team prep. And I think it's good suggestions. I'm going to walk you through my style of doing it and just gratitude to Forest Park. Forest Park is used to doing mission trips. So we have a system in place. And a lot of this is something they put in place because if a small church goes, they don't do any prep, but then they show up and they don't have any translators. And it's just a real time of misery for the missionaries if we don't come in with good attitudes. I'm not going to make them miserable. I'm going to support them and make their ministry better. And so that's for the attitudes. So he says a couple basic things which are really good. Spiritual fasting and prayer. Number 2, physical exercise and health. And this is important because I remember we had a family who didn't want to join the hike, and they were up there expecting it to be an hour long, and it was 6. And so I got ripped apart that evening, and I'm just trying to enjoy hanging out with people. And I probably should have. I was like, what, 25, 27 at the time? Yeah, give me grace. We can ignore a couple of these things. We can go over some more of this stuff, like toilet paper in the trash can. Nope, I'm going to go over this now so you remember it and it'll be cemented in your brain. Toilet paper in the trash can. My second trip there, someone put toilet paper in the toilet. They don't have a sewer system as good as ours. So you can't put toilet paper. Definitely don't put the wet wipes in there. You got to put it in the trash can. Otherwise, you back it up and then it starts sifting into the shower. And that's not fun. Just FYI. I don't know why I keep looking at you, Esmeralda. It has nothing to do with you. I'm just looking at you. We can talk about a lot of this stuff. Number 9, rely on the Spirit, not always on translators. There's going to be times this will happen. You will be by yourself and not know the language. Does not change the fact that God put you in that position. And so trust God. I've heard story after story, y'all don't think I'm a weirdo for saying that, where someone just either spoke in English, and I've heard situations where they spoke in English thinking the person only spoke Spanish, but then they realized they spoke English. But they spoke the gospel message and it worked. I've heard radical stories where people have spoken in their language when no one would have understood them, but for some reason God superseded their inability to communicate and did something through it. So this stuff really does happen. Number 10, never give money to street beggars or individuals without the full consent of the site missionary. And I can tell you, he's not going to give you consent to give someone money. He'll go through me for anything like that. So don't give away your money. Spend it on tourism and pray for the people that you're interacting with. We're not there to give them more money. They know we have it. And if they see that you're American, they know that you have more than them, even if you think you're poor. Because you do have more than them. All right, the next page. We can actually skip through that. The reason I have it for you is because it's one of those, I agree to this, I've read all the information, I've done this. So when it comes down to it, you pay your deposit and you're about to go on the trip, we'll just have you sign these things. Make sure you agree with them for sure, but I don't want to belabor our time here with them. The next one is the waiver of liability. What that does is we're getting insurance on everybody, and in no way are we trying to negate our responsibility in this. But to protect the missionaries, we have this form or this waiver of liability. Honestly, some of this is what he sent me, and I may end up not requiring it, but I wanted to provide it for you now, just so you have all the details up front. But then the health insurance information on the back. So, you don't have to fill the stuff out now. We'll cover it later. Just give it all the information. Then the release form. Oh, he provided it for me. So I have a separate thing in here, but he provided a different one. I like mine better, but I'm gonna go with his. So essentially what happens is if you're a minor and you're going into Mexico without your parents, you have to sign responsibility over to whoever it is that's leading the trip. I've dealt with this 2 times, and we have a couple of these documents in here. Pastor Brock referred to it. Essentially, and I'll go through mine in a second. Flip back to that next page where it says notarized statement regarding minor travel. I know you're going to see a lot of Spanish, but it's also an English translation there. It just asks for a lot of normal information, passport information, and then it's going to ask for parental information. And at the end, you're going to see that it needs to be signed by a notary. Long story short, if you're going to send someone under 18, like if you've got a kid who's going, for like you guys or your parents, or you as well, you 17, 18.
Is that 18 the time of the trip or like under 18?
If you're over 18 at the time of the trip, you're fine. Okay. So anyone under 18 at the time of the trip, we'll give you this document, you're filling out that information, and then it's notarized. And all that says is you gave me permission to take your child to Mexico. We have to have that form. They never asked me for it, but I would rue the day that it never happened and I didn't have it. Because the first year, I'm going to tell you all my mistakes. The first year, we went and we drove across in Del Rio, and I borrowed a friend's car, and I got his bank to sign off on it and everything. We had notarized documents, but because it wasn't my vehicle, we had to leave it in Acuña, and that was not fun. A couple of us had to get on the bus, and anyways, I don't know. That will not happen. We're flying from likely Springfield through Dallas to Zacatecas, and that is from Dallas. It's a 2-hour flight. From here, it's like a 1-hour flight. The total time is 6 hours total. Super chill. And likely we're not going to have any of the border issues, because if you got a passport and you got permission to fly, then chances are you're allowed to be in Mexico. So there's just less stress regarding the transfer process. Whereas when we crossed the Mexican border, so a lot of issues they're dealing with that we're not going to deal with, okay? So at that, I think I'll give you more dates as we move forward. It's not going to be every week, but as we ramp up, it's going to be more significant. So I wouldn't just sign up for something today that has you gone from 4 o'clock to 5:30, because we're going to start planning those meetings. And it's going to be really fun. So I'm really excited about it. I want to get to know you guys better. One last thing. I invited mostly people, pretty much everyone here, except for a couple, pretty much told me they're ready to come. This was to confirm you're ready to come. And then for those of you who came in still interested, I'd love to know this week whether you plan to come, or today if you can give that to me. And your deposit is going to confirm to me 100% that you're planning on coming on this trip. I'll reiterate, I'm looking at Estrella when I say this, I'll reiterate, get your passport as soon as possible. Just kidding. But no, yeah, find your birth certificate, girl. Get your passport as soon as possible. And Brock said it, I am waiting on my tax return or refund right now. I'm waiting on my stimulus check right now. I'm not stressed out. I'm not freaking out. Don't hear me saying I'm in a bad situation. It is politely annoying to be waiting on the government for those things. So I am not super confident in my situation that if you put in tomorrow to get your passport and don't expedite it, that you'll get it by the time we leave. And you definitely won't have it by the time we book tickets. So I would encourage you to expedite it. It's only like $75, $80 to do that. And 60? Great. See? Sell it up here, but then it's cheaper. It's like a gift at that point. It's not a gift. You gotta pay for it. It's not fun. But get your passport ASAP. Even if you think you might be going on this trip but not sure yet, don't know if you can come up with the money or whatever it is, get your passport. It lasts 10 years, not gonna hurt you.
Unless you're a minor.
5 years for minors.
Sorry. All right. Thank you. This is why I brought her, because she is super helpful in it. My wife is also going on this trip, and she covers my bases for everything that I miss when I'm getting excited about hiking and stuff. All right. But I can say confidently, 2 years in a row, we've had amazing trips. These are the favorite mission trips I've ever been on. I've been to Brazil, I've been to Thailand, I've been to Indonesia, Kazakhstan, all throughout Europe, more all throughout Europe for you. I've been on all those trips, but for some reason, this one has always been my favorite. Maybe it's because I'm a control freak and I'm leading them, but I really think it's because you go from village to village to village and you don't always know what to expect. And there's not a lot of downtime. There are a couple days of downtime, but you need it. And so if you're ready to jump on a trip, do things you've never done before, be in a place you've never been before. And this is officially our cheapest trip internationally as a church. This is a great opportunity. So I encourage you to do it. What questions do you guys have? I've got all day, but I know I want to get you guys out of here at a reasonable time. What's your question?
Is Zoom gonna be posted later?
I'm recording it as we speak, and I will post it and send it directly to everybody. Make sure I get your number before you leave, okay? What else? Okay, any questions, Kaylee? Did your parents want to ask later?
No.
Okay. How you feel, Jacob? I told this guy about the trip last Sunday? Tuesday. Last Tuesday, he texted me Wednesday and said that I applied for my passport. I'm like, ha ha! That's a dude. Anything else? Y'all sure? It's international travel? Okay. All right. Well, before you leave, if you know you want to come, if you could just come look me in the eyeballs and say, I am for sure coming, that would be great. If you're not sure, go ahead and let me know that so I can pressure you for the next 2 weeks. So I can keep in touch with you and make sure that you know what you need to join us or when you're talking to family and stuff like that. Okay? Brady, can you pray to close us?
God, I thank you for today. I thank you for your creation, beautiful weather outside. God, I'm just excited for this opportunity. It's fun to see Matt's excitement and to draw from that. And we know that you're going to do great things through his leadership and just work through the group as they mentor and really just support the missionaries as well and be that refresher for the missionaries. God, I just thank you for everything. I ask that you bless the rest of this day. Amen.
Amen. There will be 5 translators already there, and we're trying to bring a couple other translators. So my limit is 20, but it'll be more comfortable at 15. My point in saying all that is, get signed up quickly. I think we're at 9 who have confirmed that they're coming, so there are probably 6 open spots. But a lot of you have already confirmed. So thank you. Y'all have a great day. I gotta say this: the salsa and chips out there are really good. That salsa is super good. So make sure you grab some on your way out. Yeah, and they're in foil, so it's not even gonna make a mess in your car. Make sure you take some. If I take them home, I'm not gonna do what Ben told us to do and get healthy. I'm just kidding. All right, thank you. Oh, I didn't say the food. The food's all provided there. Gorditas, half the time, empanadas, all that stuff provided by villagers and so. Anyway, thank you guys for being here. I'm still here if you want any personal questions. Oh, Zoom people, you are welcome to sign off. I will send the video to everybody. Did they?
The primary log off. I would log off.
I know. Is there anything I can do to reach out to them?
Yeah, of course. I'll see you guys later.
You're going.
Yeah, yes. I mean, I would love to go.
Okay. So just let them feel comfortable with you going.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just let them know, reiterate, we've never had any issues, no cartel issues. COVID's the only thing, but if you're getting the vaccine, are you?
I will, whenever it's available.
I haven't gotten it yet, but I had it last year.
Last on the list.
If you're young, so.
There may be
Yeah.
some validity that's it. I was wondering, like, trust people most of this information, bring it back when they don't fill out.
Yeah.
There's seniors like right now, but that's like, they'll probably graduating before now. Will they get the final results or the same one?
Are they students? In high school?
No, it's students.
I think they get the $500 cost. They have some quick,
Yeah,
because I got 26 people on the list.
yeah.
So I don't want them to get their hopes up and be disappointed. So gauge their interest, their genuine interest, like, are they gonna do it? If they're ready to drop that $300, then, okay. If you've already filled out your application, you can bring it up here and I'll take it. Oh, I'm not gonna start this Sunday, it'll be after Easter. I'm gonna have it. The only thing that I was thinking about, or you can bring your phone with you, sure. But if you have, but you you'll be able except y'all, you have okay, you were welcome to text me. So I talk about that.
Yeah, she's really good with it. I just think she's got a way to.
why I got it in on Tuesday. All week, Wednesday. I don't think we'll have that issue. I don't think we'll They're good. They're really good. Brady.
So I think it is
Well, you know,
so the constraints that I asked because it's not okay. I was really talking to the parents who were constant. Okay. Because this will happen. So like for me, I don't think more like constraints that I've got. So for one, making sure that their mom is okay with their lives. Plus, that is usually more stringent than whatever orders are out there. So like the longest time we've done it, like I can be negative, I get a complaint, but they were having rules of like come back from this foreign country, you still have court. So I just have to find out if that guidance has changed. Yeah. You know,
It has
because otherwise
now.
that's like 3 weeks if you don't get going.
Are you taking the vaccine?
Yeah.
For workers, I would totally encourage it.
I mean, I'll do that. For one, I already had it. I already had it back in November, early November. So yeah, I think it's just I gotta work through constraints, and then I guess everyone would me if I brought my freshman son. I don't sign those forms, right? Because I'm with him on the trip. Or do I still?
You will have to sign that form.
Okay.
Yeah, that one form you will have to contribute with me as a parent.
And then passport wise, like mine expired.
Yeah, just expedite it. The reality is, typically you can get a day of if you go into, because of COVID, they've limited it to only life and death emergency. So like someone dies overseas, but that's the guidance. It doesn't mean that's what's happening. So, I mean, there aren't that many life and death emergencies, and there are people full-time at passport offices there to give people passports. My encouragement, but you don't want to do same day. You don't want to do same day, but you can expedite it 3 to 5 weeks.
Okay. So I could basically I now need to go to all that.
Yeah.
Make sure that all
I would-
that stuff is good.
I would do it ASAP too.
Okay.
We have, now that you and Ella are on this list, 30 plus people on the list. Yeah, not that are going. Deposit is gonna end up being my weed